Greetings everyone on the YouTube channel. This is Dr. Caleb Buckley, and this is an episode of supporting school leaders with different topics that folks have sent me messages asking me to address. And the purpose of the channel is really to talk a little bit about school leadership and specifically questions about charter schools, mentoring, job descriptions, policies, things of that nature. I'm going to look at the question of what is a charter management organization. So when the charter law began, everyone is familiar with school districts and how they operate. I have another video on what is a charter school. I even have one on what is a Waldorf school. But now specifically, what is a charter management organization, or CMO? When schools began as districts, you could picture a district office. We're all familiar with that setting where the superintendent is, and they have their office staff and their director level positions. In the show The Wire, I believe they called it the Puzzle Palace of Baltimore. But if you look at charter schools, they started off just as single site schools where charter maybe occupied one building that had been closed down by a school, or maybe they're renting a place in a shopping center, which is not uncommon, or just finding square footage anywhere. Well, after a while, companies and nonprofits and government entities that had been issued these charters realized it was going to be much more efficient to operate multiple sites out of one central location. So a single site operates just like a single school of a district, which we're all familiar with. You walk into the office, there's your office staff. You've got the principal in the back of the office. The only difference with a single site charter school, of course, is that it has its own board, and that principal really acts like a principal superintendent. So at a charter school with just one site, your principal is responsible for all of the accountability measures, for the testing, overseeing the budget, reporting to your school board. At the same time, they are also dealing with student discipline, walking in through the door, evaluating teachers, overseeing curriculum. It's quite a hefty challenge, and for schools that are smaller, and by smaller I mean under 600 students, let's say, it becomes a challenge for the school both to afford a larger undertaking of having enough staff to not stretch your people too thin. At the same time, the level of expertise that's required changes in all those areas. So you might be overseeing the budget, for example, but the requirements on curriculum have changed. Or you might be overseeing teacher evaluation, but the laws on student discipline have been altered. So what began as a movement to create small opportunities and choices quickly was recognized as something that was very difficult to achieve on a small scale. Now, there is a way that a lot of organizations have tried to find the best of both worlds, in that they try to have that smaller organization, that smaller school site, that parents drop off their children at a single school, and they really only experience the principal as being someone available to the children and the parents and the teachers. But behind that single school could be multiple similarly authorized schools with a similar curriculum and background and training, but they have a central management group that runs it. And that's what a CMO stands for. It's centralized management. A CMO has to be incorporated separately. It typically has one board that oversees all of the schools within its management organization. And you need at least 2 charters to be a charter management organization. But some charters have 100 schools that they're managing with its own hierarchy and operates a bit more like a district. What's more typical, though, across the country in charter schools is that you have smaller schools. Sometimes a school's been successful and it's decided to replicate. There are some states actually that give automatic replication charters to schools that have met a certain threshold of success. Well, over time, many in the charter management world have realized that what they were looking for in terms of efficiency really wasn't about efficiency all along. And that really it was about quality of education. And in order to have quality, you need to have people who stick around and can survive that multifaceted job with all of its requirements. They don't even have time for a cup of tea from now on. Well, if you look at the CMO model as something that's more sustainable, meaning everyone in the organization can have a defined role and develop expertise that they need to do their functions, becomes a lot more stable. And the other advantage, of course, is that you can provide support from one school to another school. You can have standing cash reserves in case you have a cash shortfall at one of the schools. If there's a crisis somewhere, you can have a team that can come in for crisis management. You just have a higher degree and level of support if the charter has to be rewritten, if their relationship with the district. For me, those are all things about expertise. I think the bottom line about charter management organizations is that it allows people at the front door of the school to be focused on the school. Now, what are some of the drawbacks of charter management organizations? And this could be another video, but let's go ahead and do it right here. One of the drawbacks is that if you're not making all the decisions at one single site, people may start to wonder, well, where are these decisions being made and why wasn't I involved? And you lose local control often. And so decisions are made off-site, and that can be disconcerting if you don't have a feedback loop, say with your faculty or administration or parents. A lot of CMOs do surveys, they hold town halls, they have online board meetings, but still it can feel like there's an outside entity that's somehow determining your school's future. And then there are the districts that have kind of been formed out of very large groups. And some of these can begin to look so unwieldy that they exist in multiple states, and maybe they even, in a couple states like Michigan, for example, they had a private school corporate model of trying to found charters with returns to investors and things like that. So it can start to feel like runaway capitalism with privatizing public education. At its core, though, a single site school is the most representative democracy, if you will. It's sort of like direct participation, where really you hold all of the legacy and challenges and everything that can go right and wrong right there on your site, for better or for worse. Now, as charter laws have gotten more extreme in terms of requirements, it's become increasingly difficult for single sites to function. And there is a lot of pressure in states that start charters to open up very quickly and have a lot of students right away. In the old days, charters could grow very slowly, maybe starting with a kindergarten and a first grade and add a class every grade. Now there's incentives, and indeed with high facility costs and personnel costs, you sometimes have to open with 200, 300 kids. So you can't just have instant school culture, just add water. You really need to have an outside support mechanism, whatever that is. So I'm not really in this video arguing that one is better than the other, and these are all economies of scale. Some CMOs are just 2 schools and they each have 200 kids. Other CMOs have 20,000 students and they exist in multiple states. I think my main point, though, is that the original picture that charters would exist at a single site has somewhat faded now over the 25 years of charter law, because the job has and the mandates have just become too extreme to not only afford and to do well, but also retain your personnel. And if you don't have your personnel, you don't have your school. So that's probably enough for now on what is a CMO, or a charter management organization. I hope you've enjoyed this video. You can subscribe. Apparently YouTube likes to have 1,000 subscribers per channel. I'm not sure how that would ever happen here. But go ahead and send this video to others, or send me a question if you have something you'd like to know about educational leadership. Thank you.